Good evening and welcome to the November session of the Southern Fried DNN user group. We are coming to you from Mooresville again this month, back here in David's Envisionative offices. So some familiar surroundings, and already we have a good group of folks online to join us for tonight's session. We have two speakers this November. We have our very own Clint Patterson, who's going to give us an introduction to Microsoft's newest interesting topic, Blazor. So we're going to get an introduction. I wouldn't call this a deep dive. This is going to be a skimming the surface overview. So this should be very interesting for us, just in concepts of what's next for us to get into. Mike Smeltzer is also joining us for the second half. He is going to present on DNN Connector API. This is some information here that David, that Mike's been working on here for the past couple of months, and we want to hear about some of what he's suggesting and kind of bringing this API up to more use and more features and complexity in the long run. So this is all good. Tonight we have several good things to announce as well. I'll go ahead and begin by coming over to DNN Summit to talk a little bit about the summit that is, the information is just days away from getting posted to the website. We have people registering for and signing up to attend the conference, which is in February 2019. In Denver, again, we're going to have our conference and then skiing slopes activity fun afterwards on the weekend. But as yet on the website, we don't yet have the training information up. We don't yet have the speakers up. And we are we're days away from that. Speakers have all been accepted. The emails have been sent out to the speakers, alerting them, and most all of those speakers have communicated back. So the last that I heard or understood is that we will be able to post the sessions and the details for those sessions after Thanksgiving. So we have a little bit more communication to do, but then we should be able to post that at Thanksgiving. So if anybody is waiting to register because they want to see the sessions or see who's going to be speaking, you should be able to finish off your Thanksgiving break by registering for DNN Summit. Myself, I'm in charge of the training sessions, and I have all of that information shortly ready to post up, but we have, 5 training sessions to speak of. And if I haven't already mentioned them every single session, I'm going to mention it again today, and then we'll be posting up some video interviews and some other promotionals around those. But we have DNN Administrator Training. That's a basic course for, again, full-day training course for administrators who are just starting to learn how to work with and edit and work inside of their DNN instance. By the time they're done with this session, they should know how to take ownership of their DNN instance for the edits and administration tasks they have to do. We have skinning or theming. That is a perennial classic that is very, very popular. We have taken the development course and turned it into 2 development courses. So we have an intro to DNN module development, and we have an advanced DNN module development course. That is Will Stroll and, Scott Wilkerson. I like to say it was Anthony Oakham from my head. I'm like, no, Anthony is doing theming, and Scott Wilkerson is doing the advanced module development course. We have split that into 2 because often the mixture in there is some very beginning level folks and questions and setup type of training necessary. And the other half is more advanced people who want to get going and start talking details and getting deeper dive into what they do and maybe projects they've already worked in. So those being split into 2 courses, we're very excited about. And then our 5th course this year, we are having an Evoke training course that is going to split time between Evoke introduction and administration training specific to Evoke and liquid content training and introduction. So we have 5 training courses. We then also have 2 elements that run half day. We have the Business Roundtable, which we've had multiple times, and is always a good time to participate. This year specifically, we are really wanting to talk about the future of DNN and things that you want to see in DNN going forward. So that Business Roundtable is going to be themed around improving DNN and what you want to see. So we're encouraging everyone to come to the DNN Roundtable. The first half of the day in that same room, we will be running the DNN Help Desk. That is your chance to come and spend a half day, 2 or 3 good solid hours of doing technical support and help requests on your code, on your website. You have skinning problems? We'll get some experts to work on it with you. You have some I click here and everything goes crazy kind of questions? Great. We'll pull the right experts aside and get them looking at it, and you're going to benefit from not only group conversation about issues and topics, but get some hands-on training and tech support right there. So that's my plug for DNN Summit. At this point, I can scroll down on the page to mention that we do have major sponsors in place. Manage.com has stepped up to be a primary sponsor, so we have to thank Manage.com for their sponsorship of DNN Summit. We have 10-Pound Gorilla Engage, Iowa Computer Gurus, and we have more sponsors coming. So it's a good point in time to mention that things are cooking for DNN Summit, and we want everybody to pay attention, register, and watch when we have more stuff coming up here in the next few weeks. Anything else you guys think to mention about Summit?
I think you covered it all.
It's going to be cold.
It's going to be cold?
But so much fun.
Absolutely. Wait, is there fun in that? I don't know.
No. My feeble attempt at being funny.
We might have more snow this year than we know what to do with. That'll be interesting. Sponsors for Southern Fried. We have been blessed by several new sponsors stepping up to help us out with Southern Fried, and since we have joined the .NET community officially, the .NET Foundation, we have been both receiving our subscriptions for the Code magazine. So a few Southern Frieds ago, I encouraged anyone who wanted us to send them their magazine to give me their address in the comments. If you signed up last time, I still have your address. Basically, I'm going to put all this into some care packages and send them out to each of you so that you can have those, along with some other swag and stickers and things like that we have here. We'll be glad to send those out. So if you didn't give me your address before and you want to have us send something out to you, just drop your address in the comments, and Clint will help gather them for us later on towards the end of the...
No pressure.
towards the end of the session. So then, sponsor-wise, though, we have a brand new sponsor, and there are some pretty nice benefits to having new sponsors step up. So we have Rev Debug that is now graciously offered to sponsor SoFried and our developers, and we have giveaways for 3 meetings. This meeting, and then we'll do our meeting in January and our meeting in February. And what we have here is, cover the license up, I guess. What we have is a 365-day license, so a full year license for Rev Debug, the extension from Visual Studio that you can use. And their slogan here is, "Bug fixing has simply never been this fast." David, you want to talk about it just a little bit and give some props there?
Yeah, so it's an extension of Visual Studio.
All right. Well, so
no, actually, I played with it for a few minutes, and it looks amazing, but I can't speak too much of it. But I do know that it's being talked about quite a bit out there, and it's catching on. So they're doing a good job getting the word out about it, and they have other tools as well with this. So I do suggest you do check out their website at revdebug.com and dive into it. You can see some more details about what it does and all that.
Well, what we will have in our next few SoFri meetings is they've sent us a media kit with some instructional information and a video that we're going to watch in our January session. And then we should be able to get them to join us for a meeting and give a little bit of an introduction and presentation for us for 5 or 10 minutes. So we will look forward to that in one of our next SoFri sessions. So sponsors thanked. We move on to community information and things that have been happening recently. As always, you can head over to the community blog to see the newest posts of information that is out for activities in the site, in the community in general. I kind of go to the DNN Digest at meetings here to kind of walk through several things that Clint has announced. If you're not signed up for the DNN Digest.
And if you notice, that DNN Digest was my 100th blog post on the
No kidding.
Yeah, if you look up to the right, half of them are just like posting video meeting.
Well, what do you know?
So,
what do you know?
I'm inspired by, I went to the school of Shout for blogging, then a Shout.
All right, all right. Cool. So we have the DNN Digest. You're saying this was your 100th blog post, but this is also the 1-year anniversary. So you've done 12 of these DNN Digests.
Yeah, and DNN Digest was a brain child of Mr. Will Morganway, who is on the meeting. That was the first thing he said we needed to do.
He
Props.
was on the meeting. Oh, now he's back. Okay.
Yeah, we just thanked him and mentioned him. So, all right. So just a few things to run through. Mike Smeltzer is on with us tonight. He's going to be going through DNN Connector API tonight, but next month at Toronto area, Tadug user group, he is also going to be presenting there. So he's doing back-to-back user groups. So we have that coming up ahead.
He's on the DNN speaker circuit.
He's on the circuit. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, what is the topic of that one?
Yeah. So the topic of the one, Doug, is I forget the exact name we're using, but it's basically the building blocks in DNN. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of scattered resources out there. Normally things that are race are module development, skin development, but there's a whole smattering of other types of building blocks in DNN. There's analytics providers, there's connectors, there's things to do with caching, lots of other things you can use to build your solutions. So it's kind of going through not everything, but a lot of different types of things that people might not know they have at their disposal. Whether you're building a skin, or whether you're building a module, or whether you're looking at it from more of a high level and trying to architect an entire website. Just kind of laying out what you have available to you and what are some of the pros and cons of going one route versus the other.
That's a really good idea. That should also become a blog post so that people can run through that afterwards off of the video.
Yeah, I think Clint Patterson was going to be doing all of the note-taking at these events.
Transcribing, yeah. All right, that sounds good. He'll do ghostwriting if not. Okay, so some other community things. We have DNN Hangout back for an inaugural new video. So Will Stroll hosting and was joined by David Poindexter and Ralph Williams. So if you haven't caught that yet, you can catch that. Clint was saying that that's going to be something that will pick up and have a few more hangouts, so look forward to those in the future.
And actually, Ralph is a co-host of DNN Hangout. So,
I see. Excellent.
Getting back into the mix there a little bit.
Good.
Master Thema.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. So be sure to check out the DNN Digest for new information. Again, if you haven't registered for it already, please go ahead and do that. That keeps you up with a lot of things that are going on in the community. Actually, small soapbox while I talk about that for a second, and I should have brought up the forum post. Basically, earlier this week, I saw a forum post come in on the DNN software site where an old school DNNer, somebody who's been around for a while, basically kind of complained that he didn't know where to find information and where to find where people are and what they're talking about. And he had just been going to the forums to find activity and felt like he didn't see activity going on. So in that, I pointed him to Facebook. I pointed him to Tadug, to SoFri, to DNN Connect, to OpenDNN, the Slack channel, to lots of different ways you can get involved. And if you're not sure what's going on and you want to be involved, this DNN Digest is a good central location because Clint does a good job of mentioning all the different ways and places that the community is coming together. And if you feel like you're in a vacuum and you don't hear a lot, you should be on receiving this DNN Digest so you can keep up. One of the things that I did want to mention here, because there's a few more days left for it, is the DNN Website Awards. This is something we've talked about a couple of months in a row, but the deal is that submissions are closed at this point, and voting still has another week. we've basically come to.
That's the deadline to vote.
Yeah, this is the voting deadline. So our voting deadline is Thanksgiving right here. So we just have a few more days that you can come in and vote. So
we should tell them to hold off and announce that at DNN Summit, the winners.
They should.
I kind of mentioned it in some of the other things, but I'm not talking to folks. We should present awards, and if anybody's there and there's something physical, we should give it out. But
and if you scroll down, the voting's on Facebook. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So
whenever you submit an entry in there, they have a process by which they post that entry to Facebook, and they're counting likes on that Facebook post.
That's why Cassidy's saying vote or
whatever. So if you have if you didn't participate, you'll get a chance next year, I can imagine. But you can still be involved right now by voting. So that has a few more days to it. It's worth mentioning. Okay, I have run through the community things that I wanted to address. It's time to move on to the first part of our session. We, of course, know and love Clint Patterson, recent dad of a 1-year-old and counting, who's keeping him awake at night. He's doing all of the work that he does for DNN Corporate, all of the work that he does for DNN Summit, all the volunteering work that he does for community things, and he decides he has time to research a new technology and learn about it and give us a presentation. So that's something that deserves some accolades. So here we go. Without further ado, we're going to scratch the surface with Blazor.
That means I have to switch over.
You should switch over presenter. I talked and gave you the.
Yeah, and I was busy trying to answer questions. All right, switch presenter. Clint, did I send that to you, or did I accidentally send it to Grandpa?
I'm not.
I must have accidentally sent it to Grandpa. Let me.
Well, Joe, he may want to present. All right, there it is. Okay, start sharing. All right, are y'all able to?
Yes, looks good.
See my screen. All right, and can I minimize this?
That's a scary iceberg.
So what are we scratching here?
We're scratching the
water or
the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, the tip.
Okay. That's success above the water, and everything it takes to get to success underneath. You know what people don't see. So no. But anyways, welcome to the session here. We are the session title is Scratching the Surface with Blazor, and as we just alluded to, this is going to be kind of a high-level review or overview of what Blazor is. And to be honest with you, I am simply trying to emulate a session that Dan Roth, who is on the ASP.NET team, I think he's actually the program manager, he gave a talk. I think it was on Channel 9, and I'm just going to essentially try to re-give that talk and, sprinkle in some Southern wisdom in various places, right? But the question is, while we're going through this, I want you to think, about, like, what is this new technology and what could it potentially mean for DNN? So kind of keep that in mind as we go through. And I am Clint Patterson, as Ryan mentioned, Ecosystem Manager at DNN Corp. That is my Twitter handle, CBPSC. If you are asking yourself, what is an Ecosystem Manager? It's kind of like an evangelism or developer relation, community style role. I span a lot of different boundaries, basically in between the company and the open source community. All right, so a couple notes before we get started. If you can believe it or not, am not a Blazor guru. Blazor has a client-side and a server-side story to tell, and you'll see that play out throughout the presentation. And also, Blazor is still evolving. So I put that in here so that you'll understand, what you may see here tonight could be different in a couple of weeks, so still working on it. So let's start out with what is Blazor. So this is a blob of text, and I'm actually going to read it. So Blazor is an experimental .NET web framework using C# Razor and HTML that runs in the browser with WebAssembly. Blazor provides all the benefits of a client-side web UI framework using .NET on the client and optionally on the server. it's a lot of words, but we need to kind of focus in on a couple of them, right? So experimental, I put experimental in quotations because if you translate that, it's basically Microsoft saying, we don't want you to run this in production yet. But they're very much pushing Blazor. Also, when you think the next couple words, you know, running C# Razor in the browser, that's also something that is, you know, new. And the next sentence, it says that Blazor provides all the benefits of a client-side web UI framework. So let me ask you guys in here, or you guys on the meeting, when you hear the term client-side web UI framework, what comes to mind?
100 of frameworks?
Spring and jQuery framework?
You got all kinds of them, right? Like Angular, React, jQuery, Vue, that kind of deal. And then the last portion of that sentence, using .NET on the client and optionally on the server. So you're probably familiar with hearing .NET on the server, but you don't hear people saying .NET on the client, right? So this is getting into kind of a new space here. So as you can see, we're talking about full stack web development with .NET, and that happens via WebAssembly. And there's no plugins required. That is, you don't have to install the Flash player or, you know, any random plugin.
Okay.
So some people ask, where did the word or term Blazor come from? So we're talking about running Razor in the browser with .NET Core. So you've got so you've got Razor, and you're using WebAssembly to run it in the browser. So browser plus Razor equals Blazor. Now you're going to hear a lot of terms: Blazor, Razor, components, client, this and that, and we're going to do like a terminology review here at the end. So, but anyways, that is where the term Blazor came from. So why use Blazor? So you do get a lot of benefits and advantages. I won't read all of these sentences, but you've got stability and consistency, right? So, you know, you're used to programming in these standardized frameworks from Microsoft. You're used to them. They're stable. They're consistent. You're going to be able to, you know, continue using those tools. Modern innovative languages, so they're constantly evolving and improving. The .NET languages, you know, you get that benefit. Industry-leading tools, you'll be able to do this in Visual Studio and continue to have the development experience that you're accustomed to. And you can do it across all these different platforms. Speed and scalability, I mean, you guys know this. .NET performance, it's reliable, it's secure. But when you start using .NET as the full stack, then it gets a little bit easier to be more reliable, more secure, and faster. And I kind of changed the color of this one. I don't know if you can see it too much, but to me, this is the biggest win, right? So it's full stack development. So your C# developers will be able to leverage their current skill sets on the client now. So if you're somebody like Mitchell Sellers, he's rejoicing, right? He's like, I can finally do stuff on the client, right? That is a big win, and you'll be able to use that code in the client or the server. And you can share that logic among apps. And then the last one is, you know, if you're using modern browsers, you'll have wide browser support.
That was going to be my question. Was how many browsers is it supported in? Is this only Edge or something?
Yeah. So you'll see there's no plugins and there's no like code transpilation that has to happen. It will just work, and you'll see that here shortly. All right, so I put this on here because this is kind of what you start thinking, right? It'll make your ears perk. It was like, hold on. So you're telling me I don't have to learn all these JavaScript libraries, right? That is kind of where we're pointing to here. So people ask the question, is Blazor the next Silverlight? And my response, no.
You know, I was thinking about that. I was heavily working with Silverlight at one point.
It's a valid question. We even had people ask that question, you know, when they were coming around at the Microsoft conference, right? They're like, what's this Blazor thing? You know, you guys are pushing it. Should we invest time learning it? I don't want it to be Silverlight because, you know, these guys are pretty blunt. So anyway, it's a valid question to ask, right? But I'm here to tell you, at least from my perspective, that that Blazor is strategic for Microsoft. So on the first bullet point here, imagine that you run a technology company, for example, Microsoft, right? And you build tools. What if you could get your clients running your entire technology stack from database from the server to the client, right? I mean, that has to be a win for Microsoft, right? If I can get you using my stuff in your whole development process, there's nothing bad about that, right? So also, looking at the signals. So we've got the cover of Code Magazine. I did put it in the PowerPoint. I brought my Code Magazine. If you notice, they've got Blazor on the cover. So that is for some people not a big deal, right? But for others, it is a message, right? So it's like, reading the tea leaves or whatever it is. So that's one thing. Now, you guys know that I went to Microsoft Ignite, and I was working the open source booth. Well, the ASP.NET booth was right there beside us, and guess what they were demoing all week at Ignite? Blazor, right? So they're promoting it. The team's, kind of passionate about it. And then if you look at all the materials coming out from Microsoft, the .NET team, there's a lot of updates around Blazor being shared. Blazor has its own website, building up its own community, and we're going to look at that stuff. Yeah, so I was saying they're already building open source contributions up around the project. And you can use Blazor with Electron in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that. But the whole point here is, I think Microsoft is really Blazor is strategic for Microsoft. I think they're putting a lot of energy into it. I think it's going to open up a lot of possibilities. All right, so Blazor, the client side. How can .NET run in the browser? Anybody know? You've already. All right, so we're going to go through some stuff here. So running .NET code inside the web browser is possible through WebAssembly, which abbreviated is WASM, right? So that's also a relatively new technology. WebAssembly can access the full functionality of the browser via JavaScript interop. And WebAssembly runs in the same sandbox as JavaScript, so that prevents, as I said, malicious actions on the client machine. So when a Blazor app is built and run in a browser, the C# code files and the Razor files are compiled into .NET assemblies. The assemblies in the .NET runtime are downloaded by the browser, and then Blazor uses JavaScript to bootstrap the .NET runtime, and we'll show that here in a little bit. It configures the runtime to load the required assembly references, and DOM manipulation and browser API calls are handled by the Blazor runtime via that JavaScript interop. So if you're asking yourself, well, what about an older browser? If it's not modern, if you have to support older browsers. So WebAssembly, Blazor is going to fall back and use an ASM.js-based .NET runtime. So what is WebAssembly? WebAssembly is essentially bytecode for the web. It's intended to be used as a compilation target. And in this video, this is Dan Roth, the guy I was talking about, the ASP.NET program manager. This is a still frame of the video where he's talking about Blazor, and he's showing the C# and CS HTML, which is the Razor files, if you can't read that code, being compiled into .NET assemblies. And then he's got the browser, which will have your app name, whatever, DLL. And then you can see you've got .NET and the mono.wasm, which is the WebAssembly. It may be hard to see there, but that's him talking through it. So they're using Mono to make this happen. And what is Mono? Mono is a WebAssembly implementation of the .NET runtime. So when we load up the project here in a little bit and we F12 and look into the console or the network tab, you'll see that mono.wasm, which again is the .NET runtime being loaded into the browser. So what does all this mean? It means you can leverage your existing .NET skills on the front end. You don't have to worry about the JavaScript flavor of the week. And like I said, the C# developers around the world are rejoicing. All you have to do is find a video on YouTube about Blazor and look at the comments. They're like, it doesn't matter if it's ready, just ship it. You know, we love it.
We'll deal with the fallout.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Because they feel like they'll be able to catch up with the JavaScript developers, right? Like they don't have to learn all this, JavaScript frameworks. They can just use their skills. So you will be able to debug in the browser, but that is currently a little bit flaky, as they note. They're still working on that. All right, so let's talk about how this kind of works. So Blazor components. So Blazor apps are built with components And as we go through this, you may have the same feelings that I did, which to me, it feels very Angular-ish if you've ever dealt with Angular. It also feels kind of modular-ish to me in the sense of a DNN module, perhaps. So a component is a piece of UI, such as a page, dialog, or data entry form. It could be anything you can imagine on a website, right? It could just be injecting some type of service if you wanted to. Components can be nested, reused, and shared between projects. So in Blazor, a component is a .NET class, and those classes can be either .cs files or .cs.html. So it can be a class or a Razor markup page. So a little review. Components can be nested, created with Razor or C#. They can be shared via class libraries, and they can be unit tested without requiring a browser DOM. So Blazor Infrastructure. So Blazor is going to offer you these core facilities that most apps require, and similar to these JavaScript frameworks that we mentioned, you're going to get layouts, you're going to get routing, you're going to get dependency injection, and all of these features are optional. So if you're not using any of them, then the implementation is going to remove them so that you'll have a good performance, or that you will get good performance out of the application, right? So we talked about JavaScript interop, or interop. If you still need to interface or integrate, like let's say you still need to use jQuery or whatever, you can still do that. WebAssembly is designed to be able to interoperate with JavaScript, and that's actually how it bootstraps the applications. So you can call any library or API that JavaScript can call, and then this one should kind of get your mind spinning a little bit, right? So C# code, go ahead.
Full library of C# code, sub-library of C# code, only some things run in this, some things don't yet? What's the idea there of what you can and can't do? Is it a...
No, so what it's saying is with C# you can call into JavaScript code, or with JavaScript code you can call into C#. So let's just say you're coding in some Razor function or something, and then you need something that currently is not possible inside of C# to happen, I don't know, in jQuery or
right. You can pass back and forth.
Yeah, you can
sure,
basically talk in between. So
that is
yeah, so that opens up a lot of possibilities. Now,
I guess more I was asking about. You're saying that they're trying to roll this out the door. Maybe it's not done yet. So my thought.
Well, no, the openness slide said it was still in development. Go ahead. All right.
Presentation going. My screenshot just quit.
Did it crash?
Yeah, it looks like it. As long as it's still running, we're fine.
Daniel, can you hear me?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, he can.
Yeah. So you were saying that maybe it's still in development, but
oh no, it is definitely still in development. That was why I put the big exclamation point at the beginning. So don't ask any hard questions.
So is that .NET framework C# or is
that's kind of where I was going.
That's what I think it was.
Is it limited
.NET Core?
So my understanding is .NET Core. It's all .NET Core right now. But I've got more information about that here a little bit later.
Gotcha.
All right. So what do you need to get started? I'll just kind of click through these a little quickly because you guys probably understand that, huh?
You forgot the computer.
Yeah, you need a computer, an internet connection, RJ45 hookup.
Can I run this on that? The answer is yes.
Yeah, you probably should be able to. So
it is yes.
You got to have .NET Core, obviously, the specific version, Visual Studio specific version with the web development workload. You can, or you have to install the Blazor Language Services extension. You guys can read this, you know what I mean. So now we're going to go into a demo. So remember, we're demoing Blazor, the client-side portion. And the concepts we're going to review here are routing, parameters, parent and child components, and dependency injection. All right, so I'm going to bounce out of that. We're going to go into Visual Studio. And I need to move that thing there. All right, so we're going to go to File and then New Project, which you all have done a million times. Now, I should also say, you don't have to do File New Project. You can do all this from the command line if you are one of those kind of people and want to be efficient. So what we're going to do is I'm going to call this So Fried Blazor, okay? And we'll just put client just to be clear, even though it should already be clear. So click OK, and notice that we've got these options here. So we've got 3 options around Blazor. So when you look at the Blazor option, it just says a project template for creating a standalone Blazor application that runs on WebAssembly. We'll click on the other 2 here shortly. So I'm going to click OK. And this is where you tell jokes during the awkward silence here.
What's on the board behind you? Instructions to other participants in the meeting?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, all right. So the very first thing I'm going to do before we even start talking about project structure is I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now, I'll also say some of the things that I'm going to demo, you should just be able to refresh the browser and the changes apply or be shown. I've got some kind of issue going on with my system where I can't just refresh and I'll have to rerun. So some of this will take a little bit of time.
Clint, if I'm not mistaken, those project, what do you call them? Those 2 projects for Blazor, you need to install an extension manually, right? It doesn't come with Visual Studio by default.
Yes, I just posted them in the chat window for you.
Yeah, so I think the
SDK as well.
Yeah, the items that I listed that you need to have installed so that you can develop Blazor, that installs them into Visual Studio for you.
Okay, I missed that.
And if it doesn't, then go to the link that David's going to share off of the Blazor docs, and it talks you through it. So, all right. So we've got the Southern Fried Blazor client project pulled up. You can see, we can click around. We got this counter that we can click. We can fetch data, right? But what I really want to show is when I function F12 here and go to the network tab and refresh. Now, this may be a little small for you, but I want you to pay attention or at least look at what's going on here. So we've got this Blazor WebAssembly.js. If you remember in my slides, I said that they use JavaScript to bootstrap the application, right? So you've got a JavaScript file, and if you can see, we've got this mono.js, and then we've got what? That mono, which is .wasm, which is the .NET version or implementation of WebAssembly, the runtime in the browser. So nobody's hooping and hollering and clapping, but this is actually pretty big time, right? So we're able to run this code in the browser. So, all right, we're going to close that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just stop running this. And we're going to look a little bit at the project structure, and then we're going to talk about some components here. So if we look at this www root folder, you'll see in the sample data this weather.json file. So this is where that was coming from. So this is obviously local data, but you could be hitting any API. So in the pages, notice that we've got these CS.html files, right? So we kept talking about components and how a component can be a class. It can also be a CS.html or CS.html or Razor file. So this is very much like, in my mind, the Angular type field. So these are components. We can reference them. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a new, we'll actually, I guess, open up the index and look at it. You'll notice that we've got this at.page directive here at the top of the page. Same thing with the counter. And then notice that we've got this onClick. This is not a JavaScript onClick. This is C#. And then we got the functions block. So we're running these C# functions in the browser, right? So let's get a little bit crazy here, and we're going to add a new item. And so my initial thought was we would add a Razor page, but that's not how it happens, at least in the demos, right? They select text file. And so we're going to create a sofry.cshtml. We got too many M's there. All right, so we've got sofry.cshtml. So what we're going to do first is add that @page directive, and then we're going to call this just /sofry. All right, I'll save that, and then we'll just come down here and go a little H1. It's not giving me my IntelliSense yet, but we'll just say my Southern component, and we'll save that, right? So we're going to go ahead and just run the application again, and this is going to do exactly what you imagine it does, but we have to show it, right, to prove it. All right, so we'll come here and we'll go /Southern, and you can see the my Southern component, right? So just like that, we're able to create a component and then reference it, right? Pretty slick stuff. So now what I want to do is we're going to add a parameter. So what we need to do is we need to add the functions block, okay? And so then we're going to do a little shortcut. We'll type in para tab, and that just gets us to a parameter. So we're going to create a string. We'll just call this string, and then we'll just refer to it as title. And then we'll go ahead and set it, and we'll just say my Southern demo title, right? So we come up here and we'll throw a little HR, and then we'll come in here and we'll just go at title. Actually, so we're setting that. All right. Well, actually, I need a semicolon here. We could come in here anywhere and go at title and notice the IntelliSense that we get. So I'm going to save that and run it. And we will probably get back to back if it works correctly. So we will Southern. And see, now this is not pretty, but you can see what just happened, right? So we've got the content that I typed in, but then we also have the title, which was that parameter, right? So I'll stop this. Now I'm going to go back to the index page, and underneath that survey prompt, I'll throw an HR just to give us some space. And I'll start typing the letter S, O, and boom, look what happens. So we get the Southern IntelliSense, like it knows that there's a component called Southern, right? Yeah. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll run it again. So this is going to be doing what? It's going to show on the home page, right? So there it is. So now we're able to reference that component from the home page. So now what I'm going to do is, remember we created that parameter of title. So if I come into this element and I start typing in the word title, you see we get IntelliSense, and so I'll just say new title. I'll save that, and then we'll run it again. And it should update the title. It's like black magic. So now you can see my Southern component with the new title added in. Now if we go to the /Southern page, you can see it's still set to what it was, right? So just like you would imagine. So you can get pretty creative with these. So now I'm going to go back to the counters page, and we're going to just create another parameter. And this is what Dan Roth did in his demo. So protected int, and we're going to change this to increment amount, and then we'll set this equal to 2. And now down here, instead of going plus plus, we'll go plus equals, and then we'll go 5 here. So we've just updated or added in a new parameter here for or actually it shouldn't be plus 5. It should be, I was ahead of myself, it should be plus increment amount, which is the parameter I just created. So we just updated this, and you remember we had the counter page. So now on the index, I'm going to go back and I'm going to just throw in another HR for some separation. We'll add in that counter, and then we've got, close that, we got increment amount, and I will do 5. That's where I wanted to do the 5 here. So this is the same principle here as what we just showed. And on the home page, when we click count, you can see we go 5, 10, 15, 20. And if we go to the counter page, we're still going by 2, right? That makes sense to everybody? Good deal. All right, so now we want to talk a little bit about dependency injection. So when we go to the fetch data page, you'll see where we've got the at page directive with the route. And then we've got this at inject. So we've got this HTTP client, HTTP, and as we look down the page, you can see where we've got some C# code coming here or running here. We've got the for each, but then the functions block, you can see where we've got this array of weather forecast, and then we're using that service that we're injecting, and we're hitting the API in this case, which is local, JSON, right? And we're pulling data in. So this is happening. This is dependency injection is services, right? So when we go to the startup CS file, you'll notice where we have the configure services and configure. So this is like standard for any .NET Core type of app, and I believe the HTTP services is just shipped with the core, right? You don't have to add that. But if you had other services that you wanted to add, you could use those there. Now, also, I want to draw your attention to this add component app, right? So you can see, and this is to me also something that kind of reflects back to Angular or React, right? So if I open up the www root folder and I look at the index.html, you'll see where we have a selector of app, right? And so it's going to say loading until it bootstraps and injects itself in there, right? Also notice we've got the script source, blazor.webassembly.js. If you remember, I said that we use that JS to bootstrap the application. So again, we're talking about dependency injection, but this is through these services, right? So you guys have seen that it puts the weather on the page, so I don't have to review that with you. So it is pretty neat, though, and I love how it's all modular and components. So now what I want to talk about is the parent and child components. So I'm going to go back to the Southern Fried page.
Nesting-wise, or
what do you mean?
I don't know. You said that you can nest these. That's what you mean by parent and child? It's nesting, or?
Yeah. So you'll see it, but basically, the parent-child components allows you to set the content for one component from another component, right? And so it leverages this property called child content. And so in this functions block, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do para tab, but we're going to make this a private, and instead of an int, we're going to make it a render fragment. So it's got to be a render fragment, and we need to call it child content, right? So we've got that child content, and I'm going to come here and I'm just going to put it in italics. So we'll reference the child content so that any content we put in here should be italicized, right? So on the do what?
Or emphasized.
Well, emphasized, yeah. So we've got this on the index page. I just went back to the now, and I guess I should ask: is that code readable? Should I zoom in for people?
Just a touch was
helpful. Touch. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm always the guy that says, "Hey, zoom in." So we just updated the Southern Fried component, right? I added in this property of child content, which was a render fragment, and we referenced it up here. Now back on the index, I'm calling that component here. So what I'm going to do in between the brackets is I'm just going to say chili child content, right? So we'll save that, and then we will run it. So does anybody have a guess on what this is going to make happen?
It's going to make it cold.
It's going to make it pop. It's probably an error out. All right, so check this out. We're on the home page, the index, and you can see this chili child content that I just put here, but this is being set by the parent component. So in the index Razor file, we called the Southern Fried component, and then we put this content in between the brackets, which is that child content, and it is emphasized, David, or italicized because we put it there. So pretty powerful once you start thinking about the possibilities there. Now, so I started asking myself the question, well, can I put a component inside of another component? Can I, like, how deep can I go, right? So as long as you have child content, then you can add more content or more components to it, which is what I experienced.
Still fry in there?
Yeah, so, well, we already referenced Southern Fried, so we'll just do that fetch data, which is the weather.
Yeah.
Actually, I should stop that first and make sure that's saved. So I don't know all the answers to this one, but I will say, from what I've seen, is if you have that child content property, then you can nest the components. If you don't, then it will error. So see how we now have the weather forecast, but it is taking on the italicized or emphasized, so you can put that inside of it. So I haven't tried to go 3 deep with it yet. Maybe we should, but I doubt it would work if the fetch data didn't have that child content property, right? So I haven't tried to blow it up too much. But these demos here are pretty basic in nature, right? But you start to see like how you could very easily organize, an application. And for me, I'm thinking like in the DNN world, I can have a component for my menu, or maybe for my login, or for whatever it may be. But again, it's pretty powerful. So I want to kind of transition a little bit. When we build these Blazor applications, the result of the Blazor project is just a bunch of static files. So that means you could host that app anywhere that supports static file hosting. So it doesn't have to be .NET on the server, right? Because again, these are static files. However, it gets interesting when we do choose to host a Blazor app on a server that is running .NET. So what I'm going to do now is close this solution.
Which .NET is running?
That's going to be .NET Core.
.NET Core.
So we're going to go new project again.
Will it run in framework?
In a little bit. Hold on. Don't be derailing me now.
Sorry,
I'm on a mission here. So we're going to call this Blazor ASP.NET Core hosted. All right, so we're going to click OK. Now we'll click the second option here, which says a project template for creating a Blazor application that runs on WebAssembly and is hosted on an ASP.NET Core server. So I'm not going to go through the entire component, everything that we just did, because I think you guys understand that. But what I will do is run it, first of all, just to show you that it'll run, but then we're going to talk about the project structure. So if you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we've got 3 projects, right? So, and let this pull up here. But the thing that's awesome is that whether you're doing it just on the client and it's the static files, or you're doing it on the server, the component model stays the same, right? So if we look at the network tab and we refresh, you can see that we've got the same files that we talked about earlier, but now we've got some more Microsoft stuff getting included here. So I point that out to simply share the information that now, if you run it in a .NET Core hosted environment, you can leverage all the goodness, the .NET goodness that you're used to, right? So notice in the clients that all this stuff is pretty much the same. We still got the same components, but then you've got the server portion here, and this is used to host the output of the Blazor project. Notice that we've got this controller folder, right? So the sample data here, where we were pulling in, weather data on that JSON file, now they're just creating it randomly here in this code file here. But, you know, again, you're starting to be able to leverage the skill sets that you already have, which points back to the PowerPoint that we mentioned earlier. And then you've got the shared. So what is shared across both sides of the wire? And here, you know, you've just got this weather forecast. So do you guys get the sense or the feel of full stack .NET web development yet? Is it starting to click a little bit? You don't have to answer. We're going back to slides.
Well, hey, I will throw in some of the comments that have come in from the.
I'm not done yet. But
oh no, I know. We'll throw in some of the comments that have come in from chat. You know, there have been quotes like, "Yeah, I haven't looked at this yet, but it's the most exciting new technology I've seen in a while." You know,
Southerners can do it.
We've got, you know, I'm so excited I'm like a bull in a china store. You know, we've got these people excited kind of comments.
Kid in a candy store.
Nice. Kid before Christmas. All right, so
one of them.
We're
somebody else.
We are.
Me.
So we're going to transition now to server-side Blazor, which is called Blazor Components. So this is a picture of a blog from Visual Studio Magazine, and I have again excerpted some text from this that I will read, right? So this is Dan Raw, ASP.NET Program Manager talking, and he says, the primary goal remains to ship support for running Blazor client-side in the browser. Work on Blazor client-side on WebAssembly will continue in parallel with Blazor Components work, i.e. Blazor on the server, although it will remain experimental, Ryan, still in development, experimental, while we work through the issues of running .NET on WebAssembly. We will, however, keep the component model the same regardless of whether you're running on the server or the client. So
not
again,
a special version.
Yeah, not make a special version. If you can code it on the server, you can do it on the client, right? Again, the C# devs rejoicing. Now, it says you can, or he noted that you can switch your Blazor app to run on the client by changing one line of code. It's actually 2 lines, and I'm going to show you how to do that, but it like kind of blows your mind, right? But the big news was that the Blazor component model is included in ASP.NET Core 3.0, so it's going to ship, and they named it Blazor Components to differentiate it from the ability to run .NET in the browser. So you know these terminologies that kind of like start blending together. So Blazor is basically .NET on the client, and then Blazor Components is Blazor on the server. All right.
Is that Blazor Pages?
Nope. So to continue, when we talk about Blazor Components, which again is server-side Blazor, what's going to happen is when you make the initial request, your browser is going to download that index.html file, and it's going to use the small JavaScript file, which we already saw, right? But this time it's called blazor.server.js. Bonus points for anybody who remembers what it was called in the first one. No takers?
Oh, sorry, what did you say?
You missed it.
I
injected a trivia quiz. I saw you typing and I asked a question.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, I saw Signal R there. I was going to type that Chris Hammond ought to be happy.
Yeah, he should. He should. So, anyways, it uses JavaScript to bootstrap an application, and then it establishes a connection from your browser to the server using Signal R. Shout outs to Brady Gaster, right? He's on the Signal R team. So, a visual representation of this. You've got your browser, you've got your index.html, which calls that JS file, which then creates that Signal R connection to the server. So what then happens is the server is going to execute the component logic server side, and it's going to produce some HTML. That's going to be compared on the server to what is currently on the DOM on the client. And then it's going to from that comparison, it's going to, the changes that need to be made to the DOM are then produced. They're packaged up, sent to the browser via that Signal R connection, and then once they're in the browser, they're unpackaged and applied to the DOM, right? So it's kind of like a constant comparison, like what needs to change? Oh, this is different. Let's send it, and you're going to get a lot of good performance out of this. So keep in mind, the Blazor on the client, they're still working on that. That's kind of like in experimental phase. But this right here is shipping with ASP.NET Core 3.0. So I do need to give a shout out to Chris Sainty. I think Sainty is how you say it. That blog was worthy of sainthood, so we'll just call him Sainty if that's not how you say it. But this blog, and I think Sean Walker even, I saw this blog because Sean Walker like retweeted it or something. I think he may have posted on LinkedIn actually. But anyways, this blog is one of the few blogs that talks about Blazor on the server side. You know, most of the information you'll find is Blazor on the client, but this one is specifically about Blazor Components. And he makes, or he gives a lot of great information, but I extracted this one quote, and it says, the great thing about Blazor's architecture is its flexibility. Flexibility being a word that people often use to describe DNN, right? Then he goes on to say that it has the ability to separate the execution of a Blazor application from the rendering process, and that opens up a mass of possibilities for application development. So you guys who are much more senior to me in development and the guys on the meeting here, I'm sure your mind is spinning, right? And that's exactly what Chris is saying here. So shout out to Chris for that blog. Now, so we're going to do a demo of Blazor Components. It's going to be very quick. All we're going to do is look at the project structure. We're going to get kind of a brief, you know, hey, look at how fast this happened. And then we're going to change this to a client-side app by updating just a few lines of code.
Wait.
Okay.
It was already running as a client-side app. Now you're going to turn it to a server-side app.
I'm going to create a server-side Blazor Components app,
then you're going to swap.
and then I'm going to swap it. Okay? Swap it like it's hot. All right, so we will close this solution, and we'll go new, come on, mouse. New project, so this one we'll call this Southern Fried Blazor Components Demo. All right, so we will click OK, and as you would imagine, we're going to click the third option, which is server-side in ASP.NET Core. And you can, you know, read the explanation. We're running it server side. All right, so notice the project structure on this one. We've got demo.app and demo.server. And if you look at the structure, again, you've got the components. Notice we've got the services here. So this is, again, the weather forecast service, creating that data for the fetch data. So the structure is similar, but they're changing it based on which project type we create. So let's go ahead and run this project. And the first thing that we should notice, if everything goes right, is how fast that loaded in comparison to the other, right?
Yeah.
So again, if we click, you know, we've got our little counter.
It seems opposite.
Yeah, I was going to actually say, seeing that it's running local, the delay that we had on the other one is actually kind of a concern or a thought. If it took that long to run local, right, but this was instantly faster. So
that is true, but what they would say, if you, like when we looked in the console and the network tab, all the stuff that was downloaded, currently, I can't remember what it was. It was some...
Initially it was 60K.
Yeah, and when Dan was talking in his demo, he was like, we're working on getting that lower. We want to make that better. But again,
because of mono.
That's right. And that's why they're stripping out any parts that you're not using to get you better load time. But they're working to make it more performant. But again, remember, you're loading the .NET runtime in the browser, right? If we function F12, this one, if I can do that, and move this little gadget here, and refresh, notice how many files get loaded. Not many at all, right? So that's why you have a lot better performance on this one. And again, you know, the model's the same from the, you know, client to the server. So, all right, I'm going to stop that. Now, I'm going to come into what we're going to do is we're going to take this server-side app and then we're going to turn it into a client-side app. So I'm going to go into this startup.cs file, and I'm just going to take this line here and we're going to copy it, and then we're going to paste it, and then we'll comment this one out. And instead of saying use server-side Blazor, anybody want to guess what we're going to say? We're just going to say use Blazor. Okay. Now back on that index HTML. So this was the trivia question that I asked David. That you, and I'll go ahead and comment that out. Yep. So instead of saying framework blazor.server.js, what are we going to say? Blazor.webassembly.js, right? So now we're going to run this. So I don't know that you would ever like have a purpose or reason to do this, but it is pretty cool that you can do it. So the app loaded up, it didn't crash, and if we F12 it and refresh it again, now watch how many files get loaded into the browser. So you see the difference, right? So it's pretty cool that you can do that. I mean, I'm guessing that if you had like enterprise application, you would probably run it, Razor Component server side so you could get the performance and all the .NET goodness that you would anticipate. But again, you don't have to. All right, so we made it through the demo portion without any terrible issues that I recall. And so now I'm going to go back to the slide. So benefits, you get Razor Components, server-side Blazor benefits. You get access to all the .NET Core APIs that you're used to. You get that spa-like feel to a server-side app, which is pretty impressive, right? There's not page refreshes. It's very smooth. You get a rich feel. Smaller download than a client-side Blazor, what we just pointed out. You get a wider range of clients, for example, IoT devices or watches or whatever it may be, right? So you don't have the requirement of WebAssembly on the server. The debugging story for Razor Components is currently better than the debugging story for Blazor on the client side, and that's currently, they're working on it. And again, it's easy to switch to a client-side app if you need to. All right, so terminology review, because we're having a test shortly. Razor is the programming syntax that Andrew Heflin loves that is used to create dynamic web pages with C# and VB.NET. Blazor is running Razor on the client, and that's possible via WebAssembly. Blazor Components are the building blocks for a Blazor application, those CS or CSHTML files. And Razor Components is Blazor on the server. Now, the fun part, Blazor and DNN. What could Blazor and Razor Components or Blazor and or Razor Components mean to DNN, right? What if DNN fully embraced Blazor? Could we potentially be the example use case? Would it help attract new talent if we aligned our roadmap with Microsoft's strategic direction? So here's your question, David. Once we move to .NET Standard, well, you keep asking about it. Once we move to .NET Standard, which is slated for DNN 10, then using these Blazor components should become a possibility, right?
Oh, I thought you said it ran on .NET Core.
It does run on .NET Core, but
.NET Core or .NET Standard?
Well, .NET Standard. That's why I told you to wait. You were asking me what, and the project I was selecting is .NET Core. I know you're trying to stump me. That's why I'm trying to get you to be quiet. Oh man.
So in a naive way, one thing that I'm losing track of is understanding the difference of how we would implement Blazor versus Razor or Razor pages, in that they seem very similar in the result of what we get out of them.
Are you saying Razor pages or Razor components?
Yeah, which one are you
I don't know the difference between those two.
Okay,
two
because
different worlds.
Yeah, that's two different things. That's why we did a terminology review.
And it's confusing because they're both based on the Razor syntax.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only thing that's real.
So
Razor Pages has a Razor file, a CSHTML file, just like this does.
Right.
But it also has a front end piece of that as well. So it's kind of like the old web forms model where you have a ASCX controller, an ASPX page, and a code behind. Well, that's sort of.
So in the sense that those two are similar, is Blazor a more simple, pure, just your .NET by itself? You're loading it up and you go, and Blazor Components then? Or pages?
That's
which one was it? Blazor then has other stuff that it brings to the table, and if we're just looking for simplicity of the pure, we go with Blazor?
So you've got Razor, which is the syntax. You've got Razor Pages, which is a different model. Razor Components is Blazor on the server. So,
oh, right. No, I was here for that. Okay, yeah. No, I mean.
So Blazor's component based, whereas Razor Pages.
I don't mean Razor Components. In this conversation, I'm thinking of Razor Components and Blazor being the two sides of the same coin. One of them is client side and one of them is server side.
Which is correct.
So we're talking about that as being a thing that we could work towards. However, we were kind of talking about Razor Pages in previous conversations.
That's right.
Saying that that's a good method to get us heading in direction, but Blazor seems like a better direction.
So you're right in that we're talking, and Andrew Heflin started the prototype on Razor Pages as a potential stepping stone to get to .NET Core. So that is all correct. But now with the knowledge or finding out adoption of Blazor, we are not pursuing the Razor Pages method, and
because it's implied that Microsoft is not.
So that was kind of my question. Was if this has been decided, and the technology group has basically said we're going this way, or we're still talking theoreticals and concepts of what might be best?
Because everything is kind of still in development, nobody would say, "Oh, this has been 100% decided." But if you took a poll, you'd probably have more people leaning this way right now.
I get it. I can see, and I'm not a developer at that level at all. I can see the purity of this, and this is very interesting to me.
All right, so continuing on here with the slides, I'm trying to be mindful of Mike's milk.
Yeah, Mike, we're not forgetting about you. We're excited. You're coming on.
So what if DNN developers could leverage the power of Blazor for their extensions, whether that be themes or modules or whatever it may be? Would it streamline development efforts? Could it make us potentially drop dependencies on so many JS libraries? And could extensions be Blazor or Razor components?
Can we say bye-bye to jQuery?
That'd be a good question. So could Razor components offer a compelling story to DNN as a platform, core platform, and or to extension developers? So those are questions that I have that we can discuss. Relevant links, Blazor.net, we should actually go there. We will. But also this, it went there. Hold on. That was the second link here, which is this one. The YouTube video of Dan Roth, who is walking through. So basically the presentation I gave is what Dan did here. This is just me mimicking him, right? And then the blog by Chris Sainty. I do want to go to the Blazor.net site and click on this community tab. They've got good docs, APIs, all that. But notice what's going on here. So there is a community. Ryan, notice the unsupported experimental web framework. But notice you've got all this stuff happening. People building stuff up, samples, tutorials, tooling, community documentation. There's this Learn Blazor website. David Poindexter, you've got an Ionic jacket on. What about Bionic?
Blazor Ionic.
Yeah, an Ionic CLI clone for Blazor projects. So, you guys, this stuff is very simple. A lot of you guys here are much more my senior in development, and to me, this is pretty compelling. I encourage you to click through some of this stuff. Look at these. I think I saw something about a site core or something somewhere in here. Somebody, I was like, we need to throw some DNN love in here.
Absolutely.
It may have been on that Learn Blazor site. I can't remember. But anyways, they've got good information here, good tutorials, getting started, like building your first app. I mean, this is basically what we just walked through, except you got the Southern version of it. So that is my presentation, and if you have any questions, snide remarks, comments, jokes, we're open to them. But I do really, honestly, guys, I think that Blazor could be a pretty big piece of the future if we embrace it, and I think Microsoft's going to embrace it, and I would love to see DNN, really grab it by the horns and go. So Any questions, or are we pressed for time? We need to get the mic.
We're pressed for time. We need to move on.
All right, sorry, Mike. I apologize.
This is exciting. This is very
good. Wear a Blazor.
Well, I wear the Microsoft jacket for good luck, and normally I put on my hat during the demo portion because it's a channel. But I'm sorry. I did drive a Blazor in high school. At that.
Oh, well, that's something.
Yeah.
Okay. So Clint, I'm going to look for slide deck and maybe links to resources and things like that. So we'll put them into our SoFri write-up when we're posting the video online and everything. I would imagine that let's turn this into something. Two sessions from now and 4 sessions from now. Let's do a little recap. Maybe we bring some things and put some stuff up on Microsoft blogs and get some people paying attention to what DNN is doing with Blazor. We create some buzz in the other direction.
It would be neat.
All right, so David, if you would go ahead and switch presenter over to Mike. We are going to switch now over to Mike Smeltzer, who's going to talk with us about DNN Component API. DNN Connect API. I got the word component on the head.
Connection.
All right, so here we go. We got presentation coming up. Everybody who's on here with us now, it's about 7:45, 7:50. We're going to try and run this until about 8:30 or so. I want to make sure that everybody who's online now pays attention to the fact that I've taken your names for the raffle. We do have this this license from Rev Debug.
We did have that license.
That we are going to raffle away at the end. If you are online, we have your names already down for tickets. So stick around for that. And if you do have to go, just let us know. We may be gracious and let you still win anyway. So we'll see. All right. So Mike, thanks. Start talking while you're drinking. Thanks for being patient while we ran through an exciting introduction to Blazor. Let's talk about DNN Connector API and have at it.
Cool. Thanks very much, Ryan. First of all, thanks to Clint for the last session there. That was a really interesting topic, and absolutely I'm in the same boat as everyone else. Looking forward to hear more about that. Myself, I'm going to be talking about connectors in the DNN platform. Before we get started there, my name is Mike Smeltzer. I'm a IT consultant and DNN MVP based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. My website and Twitter information are there if you want more information. So yeah, this session is going to talk about connectors in the DNN platform. We're going to discuss what they are and what they are not. We're going to discuss what the building blocks are that make up connectors, a quick introduction into what the current core connectors are, and then hopefully an open discussion on where we should go with connectors in the future. So what are connectors? I'm going to ask that kind of just openly right now if one or two people know what connectors are, if they can maybe just spit out with a definition as to what they think so.
Is it a way to just add features into the persona bar without building a whole module? I honestly didn't look a lot into connectors.
Okay, sort of, not quite. Anyone else familiar with it at all? If not, that's 100% okay. Okay, so I'll take that as no. So I'll tell you what they're not. So Daniel, you had a good point there. There's not a lot of documentation on connectors. That came out in DNN 9.2. I believe it's not too long ago. At the end of this presentation, there's a few links. There's some release notes that were released with 9.2 that mention connectors. And there was one added to the core. So I'll provide those resources at the end. But I guess my point is that there's a bit of, at least from my point, I had a misconception as to what they were from reading the material that was out there. And there's limited documentation. So what I've done is kind of gone back and reverse engineered what connectors are just from looking at the code. So just for the purpose of removing any misconceptions, connectors are not a pipeline to third-party services into the DNN core events, such as adding tags into the top of a page load event, or connecting to form submissions. And it's not a standardized data storage for securely storing the connection information of third-party services. So what I've kind of found out what connectors are just by kind of reverse engineering is that connectors are a new extension type that was introduced in DNN 9.2, and it's an attempt at standardizing the user interface and data retrieval of the connection info for third-party integrations. It's currently, we mentioned the DNN API for connectors, and there's the persona bar, which is part of the core offering, but not necessarily part of the core API. But the connectors implementation is extremely tightly coupled to the persona bar. So what does that mean? It means that connectors basically in DNN give end users a common user interface through the persona bar for managing connection info, and an API for telling DNN or registering within DNN that this is my connector in the system. There is, though, no hooks or events or pipelines into anything in the DNN platform. So you're not actually connecting into anything out of the box. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit more further in a moment. So what are the components in connectors? Well, there's the DNN API itself in the DNN platform repository. And the API, basically what it does is it lets you define a connector with some basic information. And I'll do a little code sample here in a moment. But some basic information, what's my name? What are some dependencies potentially that I might have? And where some of my files exist. And then that API registers those connections on application startup. The other component is the persona bar itself. So the persona bar has a core offering that's called a connector extension. So this is just another persona bar extension that's offered out of the box of the persona bar. And what it does is it will kind of loop through the system and say, after the application started up, what connectors have registered within DNN. Okay, let's display them onto a screen in the persona bar. Then you have your connector extension itself, and then any dependencies from that. So there's really three pieces. There's the API itself, the persona bar, and then your connector. The basics of connectors. So as I mentioned, there's a brand new extension type. So in your DNN manifest, you can define a connector extension. All a connector really is a single C# file that uses a iConnector interface. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, DNN will loop through and grab all of these iConnectors and load them up at startup. One interesting thing that I came across, which unfortunately pulled my hair out for a few hours, was that the package name in the manifest must match your assembly name that the iConnector is defined in. So on startup, DNN will say, okay, grab me all of the packages, pull the names out, and go through basically the DLLs and match them up. If there's any discrepancies there, your connector will not load into the system. The connector it's set up, there's some good stuff inside there. It's convention over configuration. So similar to, I think, the persona bar modules and a few other solutions, you don't need to say, here's my view file, or here's my CSS file, here's my JavaScript, as long as they're named, and my apologies, as long as they're named appropriately, which my connector.html file is not, they will just load up automatically into the persona bar after you've registered them. The connectors use knockout.js out of the box. Something I wasn't aware of, but the persona bar uses a lot of knockout with inside of it. And the connectors extension that you're going to use to render your connectors also is built with knockout, which in turn trickles down into your connector extension. One requirement is that in your JavaScript file, there is an initialization function, and I'll walk you through that in just a moment. Out of the box, currently in DNN 9.2.2, or as of 9.2, would be the Azure Folder Storage Connector. On the connector screen, it will just basically tell you that it'll say Azure, but what it does is it lets you connect to basically an Azure blob storage account and then surface that data through the file or digital asset manager. As of 9.3, there'll be the second core connector, which will be the Google Analytics connector. We'll walk through that one as the sample right now.
Which obviously we have to promote and toot the horn of, because that is the brainchild there of Mike putting that out and getting that released in 9.3, right?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's actually my first contribution to the core platform as well. So I was pretty happy and to get that in there. Unfortunately, and fortunately at the same time, it was in an area that wasn't real well documented, so it had me go through deep down to the bowels of the platform to figure out how it worked, which took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but gave me a lot of extra knowledge around it, which was great. So if you see in Visual Studio here, this is the core platform. There's a section for connectors, and these are connector extensions that are provided with the core. Not the API themselves. The API themselves would be, I believe, inside of. Should have this on the screen. That's okay. That's all right. I actually have it. Yeah, here we go. It's in the library, services, and connection section. So this is the actual API itself within the core. And then up here we have just the core extensions that are shipped. So if we open up the analytics connector, you'll see right here that we have our connector.css file, we have a view file. This is the file you see on the screen, the iConnector. Your manifest will look just like any other extension. As you see at the top here, we are type of connector. And then we have our JavaScript file. So let's just open up the JavaScript file. Actually, let's go through the interface first here. So really, you just have to have a class that uses the iConnector interface, and that gives us some basic things to set up. There's a default display name, your icon URL, the folder, your plugin folder. So this is actually this folder where your extension is being installed. It's my understanding that the connector API was backported from the Evoke product into the platform. So what I've noticed is probably some cleanup items that were left over within the interface. So as you see here, is this an engage connector? I believe that's more Evoke-focused terminology, but it made its way back into the platform. So there could be some cleanup areas here as well that we need to take a peek at in the future. There's the ability to define a type of connector. So if we just say enum, you can do an analytics, a file system, marketing, other, or social. So once again, I think this is probably a trickle down from that backport. What I found is that these types of connectors, when I first looked at it, seeing this made me think that, hey, I could write a connector and have a type of analytics, and it would just kind of connect into the analytics system, or file system connector would connect into the file system, etc. That's actually not the case. These categories or types, currently I could not find any trace of them being used in the platform. So right now it's there, but it's not actually going to do anything. I've tried them all and gone through quite heavily, and there's no connection there whatsoever. You can also define if you support multiple. So that would mean, and I can show once we get to the GUI, but your connector could basically have a list of connections. And the connector extension, provided the persona bar, would adapt to that and give you a different user interface setup. You'll notice I've put some comments in the code here. Because there's not much documentation out there, any subtle nuances that I found, I tried to leave in the code here. Hopefully it's the first place someone will look to use an example. So, for instance, as of 9.2, you need to support multiple connectors to get access to the delete functionality. So this method down here will only get called for connectors that have multiple configuration options. You can get connectors, see if there's has a configuration, and then get config and save config. All of these are just dictionaries, so they talk back and forth with the persona bar extension as basically a dictionary of strings. Just going to open up a couple of these. I'm not going to go through everything line by line. Let's open up a few. For get connectors, it just returns this new list. For delete connector, it does nothing because the Google Analytics connector isn't the list type. Your has config, basically what happens when the connector's screen loads up, it will run this function first to see if this connector is set up in the system. This is the function that will tell it, yes, you can use this, or no, you can't. And then get config. If you look through here, what you'll see here, this is actually basically verbatim the original Google Analytics code from DNN 8.4, I believe, or 8.04. So I basically just copied that over into this connector so it would work with the existing system 100%. There's been no addition of any extra parameters or anything, so it's pretty standard of the box. But basically what it does is just returns the dictionary of strings back to the UI. And we have a save config. The comments in here, just because it's a single connector doesn't mean necessarily you don't want to deactivate it or delete it. So I don't know if this would be considered a workaround yet or not. I'm kind of treating it as one, but I added some extra properties so that when you go to save the config, there's basically a flag that says, I'm trying to save this, but I really want to delete it. And I've commented in here to hopefully give people an understanding of that. And same kind of thing, this code has just been copy and pasted from the previous extension. So, as my definition earlier, and seeing things that say type of analytics, type of social, other, file system, to me, a new developer on this, extremely misleading. Currently, gave me the impression I could connect into these pipelines. But as you can see here, really all this is giving me out of the box at the moment is more of a standardized place to store some custom code, essentially. So let's just flip over to website here. So this is just a DNN 9.2 test site locally running. You can go into the connectors section. And you'll see right here we have the Azure connector that I mentioned and the newer Core Google Analytics connector. It would have ran the has config function right now, and basically it would have looked inside DNN and said, hey, is Analytics set up? It's not, so make it show the default view. If we open this up, you just get the same fields that you would have had in the previous one. We'll just put some gobbledygook in here. Hit save, and now the Core Analytics connector is set up. And what I found is that the persona bar actually caches its views. So I had a real finicky time playing with some of these options, and there's a few bugs I would say in the implementation currently. So if you press things like cancel, it goes back to this view, even though we didn't delete the connection still exists. And if I come back in here, it's there. So I believe this is to be a bug with the overall connector extension that is surfacing the connector API information. But we can also go ahead and delete this.
I have a question, Mike. The UI for those settings, you need to build that, or it's just fields and it detects and generates a checkbox or?
Gotcha. Nope. That's exactly the next spot I was going into. So that's perfect timing for that question, Daniel. So that kind of just shows how it works. The other piece there is that connector HTML file. So the connector, and this is where some of the terminology got a little overlapping on me. So the connector extension that runs in the persona bar loops through those connections and loads these files up. So it would basically inject this connector.html file with my markup into its module itself, essentially. The UI styling, I'm just using what is kind of coming out of the box. There's, excuse me, there's definitely some room for some refactoring there. A lot of the class names and things like that really, you can tell it was backported from another system, using terms that are not kind of inherently used in DNN and more product names in some cases. So, you know, there's definitely some tidying up there from that UI that probably should be looked at in the future. But as you can see here, we're using Knockout. So I'm not referencing Knockout or loading it. The connectors extension assumes that you're going to be using that. And, pardon me, these objects here, the connectors extension is setting up for us. So it's pulling all the information in and just giving us the ability to hook into it.
And I see here you're grabbing configurations 0, configurations 1, configurations 2. That's just the order you define it in your settings?
Exactly.
How does it link back? That's it?
Yep, I believe it's just the order that's defined.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, that's pretty much what connectors are. You know, for myself, I had as mentioned earlier, the impression that, you know, I could connect into spots into DNN, into different pipelines. You know, originally when we were looking and discussing the Google Analytics connector, we had a lot of different ideas about what we should do there, but there's, at least from my perspective, you know, not total understanding of what the connector's API is. So, you know, what I'm proposing at this point, let's just go back to the slides. Actually, my apologies. I think I just missed one spot here that I probably should show. And that's the JavaScript file itself. So this is the file that I mentioned that is 100% required, this initialization function. So what I did is basically copied the one from the Azure connector, and I went through and tried to strip out every single thing that I didn't think was required. And I kind of kept removing stuff until the connectors broke. And this is kind of what I ended up with. So unfortunately, I don't have, you know, here's the template to build a connector. But I would suggest if you're interested is taking this project and just going through and anything that, you know, I've got it quite commented in here in the kind of funky spots. You know, the delete functionality is mentioned there. So you could probably just take this as a starting point and pull the guts out. But some of the things that are mandatory are the initialization function. If we go way down the bottom here, you can see it tells it what initialization function is, what the on save should be, and those action buttons. So that cancel, save, delete button, that's also defined in here as well in this action button section. I had to do some funny business, so I had to do that. I mentioned the is deactivating or is deleting flag. So I had to do some funny business in there to get the delete to work as expected, because it's not the list type. But you know, that's what this looks like. It uses Knockout as well, I believe, and connects into you know, these connections and the configurations, Daniel, as you're asking. You know, that all kind of comes with the connectors extension, and just gets kind of pulled into your connector API extension. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it does, Mike. And I'm glad you went through it in the way you did with the what it is not and what it is, because I would have been right along the wrong path of making the same cases it sounds like you did.
Yeah, I was on the wrong path and you know, spent a long time going down there. That's cool. You know, it's not the impression I'm getting from it though. So what I've done here is a couple resources. If you're interested in reading more on this, there's the release notes themselves. That basically, this is the only documentation, this release notes, that I could find on the DNN software website that speaks to connectors. It doesn't mean it's not there, just that I could find. There's a link here to the GitHub pull request, so you can get right to the code if you're interested. It tells you where the API is located, where the core connectors are, and then where that persona bar implementation is as well.
Mike, to add in one of the notes from comments and chats in the meeting, I had kind of posted the question since you said these showed up in 9.1 or 9.2?
9.2.
You know, who incorporated these and where was the documentation? Why did you have to sleuth so much? And Joe Brinkman weighed in and said that these were built at the time the DNN Corp was being acquired by ESW, and so they kind of got caught up in the delayed release, and then that also impacted you know, documentation after the fact. Sounds like this was something that was cooking for a little while, but as far as when it got integrated and released, that might be why there's some documentation lacking.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't want to speculate. You know, there's a lot of parts of the platform that are very well documented, and there's a lot of parts of the platform which, you know, are not brand new, which are, you know, years old, that have very little documentation as well. So, you know, my intent here is to just, you know, bring up these topics, and, you know, I don't necessarily want to go through and do a heavy load of documentation on something, you know, unless people are going to want to use these things as well. And, you know, in my mind, this implementation is a great starting point, but not necessarily the goal line, potentially. So, you know, it kind of moves me on to just the open discussion kind of section here, which is, you know, myself as a solution developer and an end user, you know, when I read the term connectors, it gave me a different impression. So, you know, at the end of the day, I really want to know, you know, what do people want? What do end users want? When you say, you know, I want to connect my system to something else, what does that mean? And as a solution developer, you know, what do I want? Or what do you want? So if you want to connect DNN for yourself or for a client to a system, you know, what are you looking for? How are you looking? What are you looking to do? And, you know, does the approach that we just kind of go over, does it meet the perceived needs? Or what are those needs? You know, because I know for myself, if I'm storing connection information, right, in case, you know, this could be passwords in there. There could be API tokens. You know, where should that be stored? Currently, you know, the implementation is wide open, so you could store that wherever you want. It's per, you know, developer that built it at that time. You know, should there be more of a, you know, that API basically transmit a dictionary of strings back and forth, so it's you know, a pretty standard object. So, you know, should we go one step further necessarily and say, you know what, if you're going to store this type of information, we're going to put it into a secure spot for you. Or make it so that there's this, you know, this is where you do it, not necessarily you can do it anywhere. So the way I was looking at, you know, the Google Analytics connector was that, you know, in absence of that kind of model, all right, let's just take what we have today and expose it again in the persona virus step one. But then, you know, from these findings, before going down that path of documenting or tweaking some of the API, refactoring the UI, you know, really find out what people want. Maybe this is exactly what they want and it's fantastic, or maybe we're missing the mark in some cases. So I guess that's kind of an open question to everyone listening. You know, what are you looking for here, if anything? You know, I personally would love to see a system, a connector system where, you know, if we have categories defined, such as analytics, then maybe we're actually connecting directly somehow into that core analytics pipeline, you know, or something a little more standard there, or predictable. Same with the file system, right? You know, the Azure, I haven't looked at the Digital Asset Manager to see if that is somehow in there. I don't think it is, but you know, I'm running a connector for a file system. Maybe that sounds like a file provider to me, right? So maybe it's just some terminology that needs to be potentially changed in some cases. But yeah, that's kind of where my head's going, where my mind's at now, and what I found over it.
Well, I think it fills a gap between either you build a full persona bar module, in which case it's a little bit complicated, or you have an actual module on your page, an actual UI plus the settings. So that fills that in between where you would need to store settings without having a module for that view. So it kind of gives a place to put settings for things that are not a module.
Well, hey, hold on just a second. He would also weigh in.
So this concept really grew out of what we were doing in Evoke and trying to connect to various third-party systems, whether it was file-based systems like Dropbox or Box or Azure or AWS, or even other systems like Marketo or Google Analytics, right? So it wasn't specific to one provider type like we had in the past with folder providers, but really was this broad way to connect services where the UI of the connector was more about configuring that connection information between DNN and that external system, and how you allowed for data and file transfer and system calls between the two systems. And that's what the whole point of the connectors were and why the name is what it is.
And that kind of explains why
It's Joe's mic.
No, I think it's my mic. So that connection between the display of it being in the persona bar for settings being inherently combined together with that third-party external service makes good sense.
Mike, you're not coming through for some reason.
Yeah, sorry, I have a mute on my actual microphone and stuff. Sorry about that. I was saying, yeah, in the absence of the technology group, when we started looking at this and discussing it, no one really knew a whole lot about it. So that makes complete sense and it helps to frame it a little bit for sure. I personally would love to see a system where if connectors are built and available, I write a connector for a certain system, that somehow there's a more standard way that other developers can maybe use that connection. Right now, it's not strongly typed. It's through documentation, absolutely. There's some things that we could do there. I'm just looking to bring up the conversation so that we can look to improve any aspect that people want to or might not to know about, for sure.
Well, so everyone, as we start to wrap up and say thank you to Mike for this session on the DNN connector. Do we have any more questions from the group? I've kind of been keeping track of chat, so I think I've kept up. But does anybody else have any questions that you want to roll out to Mike before we wrap the session? All right. Well then, Mike, for 2 minutes, I know you're going to do Toronto area, Tadug, next month, and you got another topic over there, but we're looking forward to having you on to talk about Shine, the DNN control panel persona bar replacement sometime in the future, in 2019. We've got a January meeting, but then we have DNN Summit in February, so that kind of blocks that out. So maybe March, April. It seems like a long time away, but it'll be here before we know it. You want to talk for 2 seconds and tell us where you are with Shine? You got some exciting things coming up soon?
So for those of you who don't know what that project is, it's something I've been working on for quite some time. It's another control panel that you can install into DNN 7, 8, or 9. And it basically looks to, as I put it, enhance the editing experience across the core platform. So that is a mobile-friendly, fully accessible keyboard navigation replacement for either the core control panel or core persona bar extensions. So we would have done I believe, Southern Fried probably back last winter now, Ryan, talking about it originally. And,
yeah, I think so.
Okay, so since then I went to DNN Connect and presented it and got a lot of really great feedback, and over the past few months have been incrementally surveying both end users and other developers to get feedback across the board before I kind of go the next step and invest a lot of resources into finishing the project.
All right.
Right now is a really interesting time though, so we've been processing that feedback over the last 2-3 months and at a really advanced state. So we're looking at releasing it in one way, shape, or form, probably in January, February as an early adopter program. So not too far away.
So we'll have some announcements to make at DNN Summit. That sounds like good timing.
Yeah, you know, I was originally intending to go to Summit, and I thought that'd be a natural continuation from the last conference.
Originally,
my first child's gonna be born just a little before that, so I'm not gonna escape. My wonderful wife did tell me I could, but I want to be there.
Mr. Seller's having a baby the week before, and he's still.
Yeah, and Clint had a baby the year before.
How was that last year?
But he was there remotely. He was there remotely and tweeting. Yeah.
Did you feel me getting ready to come on?
All right, folks. Mike, thank you very much for presenting and shedding some light in the corner of an interesting corner of DNN that apparently didn't have a lot of information out there and needed a lot of guesswork. And you've definitely shown us some neat things that can be done with this and got our wheels turning for what we can do with it in the future. So everybody, round of applause here for Mike. Thank you very much for presenting with us. We appreciate you. Clint, of course, thank you very much for your session on Blazor. I think that one way or another, everybody who was participating tonight or watches online is going to have some ideas cooking, and I think that's a good place to be. Wrapping up our session here tonight, we have a giveaway from our new sponsor. See if I can bring them up here. Rev Debug. Hello, wake up. Rev Debug, again, what we have is a full year license, 365-day license for the Rev Debug Visual Studio extension. And I have a list of tickets that have everybody's name on them, and I'm going to pass them over to David so he can pick one lucky winner. I don't know if you need a hat for that. You can just shuffle it like a deck of cards if you want. Oh, we got it. There we go. So, David will do the honors. And
I'm going to do that right in the mic here.
Okay.
Come on, baby. Come on. All right. We have a winner.
Who is?
Let's see if the winner is still online. Yes, he is. It is Mr. Pete Goo.
Really? You know what? He has had some luck. He won something.
I need to revoke his winner status. He wins.
He always wins.
He won recently. Yeah. That is pretty fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Pete, for staying online. You are the proud owner of a license of Rev Debug for Visual Studio. We will connect with you online to get you the information here.
That's a good point. Danielle said the winner needs to submit a pull request for all pending bugs.
Yeah, there you go. Because they'll have killer debugging software.
Oh, yeah. That would be a good one coming from Pete. We would all enjoy the notes and documentation that we've written up on that.
That's right.
All right. So, again, thank you very much to our new sponsor. We will look forward to having them come on to one of the next sessions that we can have. Them come and tell us a little bit more about it. I believe at this point, main thing to wrap up is to describe that here it's the end of November, so we do something a little special in December. Normally we have our own Southern Fried Christmas party. So that's something that we have, melting pots, in a few different places we've had it before. But that's what we do for our December session, so there will not be an online session for December. Instead, we encourage you all to come down and see us. You want to drive here? The rounds of drinks will be on us, but that will be roughly the third Thursday in December. I don't know. That would be December the 20th. Yeah. We will see when we're going to have that. We'll work on those decisions. Otherwise, next year, our next session in January would be December the 17th. January the 17th, right?
Maybe kind of right before DNN Summit, so to speak.
I mean, it will be the one before DNN Summit for
and
sure.
I think David is wanting to present on some like DevOps stuff.
I was really.
We don't have a speaker. We don't have a speaker pinned out yet for January, but we will let everybody know. So January the January the 17th. So thank you very much, everybody, for being online and participating and watching here in reruns.
We should invite people virtually who want to come to our Christmas party. They're welcome. They can come to the melting pot if they want to.
Absolutely, 100%. Everybody can come if they want to. We would love to see as big a house as we can get. So anyways, thanks very much, everybody, for participating tonight. Thanks again to all our speakers. We will see you in January. And if you got questions, reach out to us. We can be found in lots of places, both Southern Fried Online, DNN Connect Facebook group. I try to participate as much as I can in Adderson's DNN Open Friday. So I'm sure even if we don't talk to you again until next year online, we will see you soon.